It's Rochelle from Artful Leadership Coaching and Consulting, and it's another episode of the Artful Leader interview series. And this series is really about tapping into the wisdom and the experience of folks who are leading in arts, education, healing, and social change to really figure out how do we move forward during this crazy time together? How do we put our attentions in the right places? And so it's just been such a pleasure for me to speak with so many diverse leaders in this field. And today, I've got Michael Angelo Camacho here from the VAPA Foundation here in San Diego. And so we're going to be looking a little bit about how his organization is supporting the arts here in San Diego, and it has so many wonderful resources for our community. My name is Rochelle Archer. I'm the founder of Artful Leadership Coaching and Consulting, and my role is really supporting educators to impact young lives sustainably so that they can lead with a full tank and so that they can also build a community culture that's really going to help students and staff move through challenging times. And so that's really what my work is about. And so as we're kind of diving into these conversations, I'm looking through that lens, like how do we really set teams and organizations up for success and have those powerful impacts that we want and that we know are possible through arts education and arts-based healing. So thank you so much, Michael Angelo, for joining us today. I'm excited to hear a little bit about what you're up to. So why don't you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and your role at VAPA Foundation.
Sure. My name is Michael Angelo, as you mentioned. I'm born in the Philippines, raised in Japan, and I ended up here because of military family. Mm-hmm. But the kind of village I came from in Japan, in the Philippines, was the kind that missionary corporations or peace corps would show up. Mm-hmm. And while the neighborhood I grew up in, San Diego, well, basically there was a lot of gangs and gang prevention happening. So really, I'm a big believer of charitable work and its capacity to help people like me strive for better, become very responsible citizens of their community. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm really about. I could definitely go more in that direction, but really, I took on this role about, I guess, nearly a year ago. First, I started off part-time. Mm-hmm. As my board saw what I was capable of bringing to the VAPA Foundation, they asked me to come aboard full-time in January. Awesome. And I have a huge heart for equity and access. But really, this is not just about those things, but also enhancing quality of art education for San Diego Unified. And while there are numerous organizations in San Diego that provide art education programming, it is the school district that is ultimately responsible for providing a standards-based sequential arts education for all students and providing the resources and infrastructure that makes this happen. Mm-hmm. So with the creation of the VAPA Foundation about 4 years ago, that was a decision that was made by Cindy Martin and the Board of Education to almost as a sign that no, arts education is a part of a complete public education. Mm-hmm. And with this creation, the district intended to advocate for more community resources and to distribute those resources in more strategic, coherent, and powerful ways. Mm-hmm. So, big picture, that's why the VAPA Foundation exists. And I don't believe there's no other organization that exists in San Diego that can coordinate resources at this level and scale for San Diego Unified.
That's really exciting that there is this body that's kind of charged with looking at these things and supporting these things. That's really, really exciting. So what are some examples of things that you all have been doing in the past year, especially during this really difficult time for students and teachers? What does that look like for you all?
Indeed. So this was a strange year one because basically my year one was an extraordinary year.
To say the least.
To say the least. One of my first projects was actually an art supply drive. Because so many students were stuck at home, to target needs. How do I say this correctly? A lot of people were at home, and some of those people did not have access to just regular art supplies. Normally, these art supplies are provided by the schools. But in this case, what we had to do was do an art supply drive and create art supply kits that we could distribute to students in San Diego Unified School District who, if their parents, I come from the same background, sometimes, given a choice between, colored pencils and keeping a roof over the head or food on the table, some things.
Real world choices. Yeah.
Yeah. They're real world choices. Mm-hmm. So what this enabled was for kids to, not just have their art supplies at home, but really complete their art projects, whatever their art assignments were, but also allowed them to have a coping mechanism, if that is a coping mechanism that is valuable to them. Mm-hmm. Now, another thing that we did, it's our flagstone program. It's the VAPA enhancement program. So what the VAPA enhancement program is an opportunity for teachers in the school district to apply for microgrants between $500 to $2,500 to enhance the art curriculum within the classroom. So what they could do with that money is bring in guest artist residencies, or if it made sense, professional development, maybe through one of our art partners. Mm-hmm. And lastly, if all they need is art supplies or musical instruments, you name it, this was a way to purchase that, pencils or ukuleles or speakers. So we did that as we did in previous years. In years past, we tried to fund it at the 35,000 level. Mm-hmm. Last year, we had a lot less applicants, probably because there's a lot less programming available. Right. So it's closer to $25,000. Mm-hmm. That's what we ended up distributing. It is what it is. But we are looking to distribute more in the coming year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I love that you've got this whole range of supports set up for that educators and schools can access to make these arts opportunities possible for their students that otherwise wouldn't happen. That's really great.
Yes. And one of the things I do want to mention, the reason why we have teachers apply for this is because we do believe in the art standards, mm-hmm. and that's how the public holds us accountable, by meeting these standards and having the students meet these standards. Mm-hmm. So without a teacher on site, really addressing that aspect, that core aspect of the grant, we wouldn't be able to really monitor the programming to know whether it met art standards or not.
Yeah. Well, and having worked on school sites, that collaboration is also so important, right? Mm-hmm. And a teacher is doing their own art project, or they're collaborating with a teaching artist or whatever. It's just so important that folks work together to make those experiences really high quality for young people. So that seems really important. Yeah. So where are you guys headed? Like, now that things are kind of opening up and you're kind of like figuring out your role in this new position, what's your vision of how things will move forward, how you really want to serve the community?
Sure. Well, one of the things that we weren't able to do as much of was the arts engagement aspect of mm-hmm. what the VAPA Foundation also seeks to deliver. Mm-hmm. So things like opportunities for students to produce and perform pieces of work, and audition for them, things like that I would like to see more of, and things like cluster festivals. So what a cluster is, in case those who are listening don't know, mm-hmm. every elementary and middle school that feeds into a high school, that's considered a cluster. We have, I think, over a dozen clusters in our district alone. And basically what a cluster festival is an opportunity for students and parents and teachers to all gather at that cluster, invite all the local art partners who are within that geographical area, and celebrate the arts. But not only celebrate the arts, but to also introduce them to the local art partners that could better serve them because they're within the same community.
Right.
And that's something that I think is important. I mentioned equity and access before. But to me, I believe if I'm doing my job right, that all the art disciplines are represented in every cluster.
Right.
So the four art disciplines, at least in California, for those who aren't in California right now, are music, theater, dance, and what am I forgetting? Visual arts.
Yeah.
There's actually a fifth one called the media arts, but it's so new that it's not quite as integrated into our programming yet, but it will be. And that is also important to have that art discipline represented in all schools.
Yeah.
So I think the art,
as we're moving forward in the super digital age, it's a really powerful emerging art form. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's just one of the things I want to see, like have every art discipline represented during school hours. And if not during school hours, then definitely after school hours and over the weekend. This is really, it takes a community to do this work, as you, as a member of Creative Youth Development, know. Yeah. Like for us to really do this, sometimes there's the in school hour work, but then there's also the outside of school hour work.
Yeah. Yeah. And so as the VAPA Foundation, working primarily through like teachers, how does that work to collaborate with sort of like creative youth development organizations who are providing that after out of school time support and arts creative youth development kind of work? How does that work?
Of course. Well, anyone who has spoken to me, I would say the first thing you have to do is develop a relationship with really the central office, the district. Because if you can get a contract with them, whether it's in school or after school hours, the VAPA Foundation is here to enhance those type of programming. Okay. So, for example, there's one, it's sort of in the works, but there's a collaboration I'm currently thinking about doing where there is a program that was funded by the Level Up program here in San Diego. It's a summer program called, I think, Artivism. What it was a way for kids to learn activism through the arts. And it's very fascinating. I'm still learning a lot about it. But one of the things that I'm considering at the moment is to find a couple funders to make this summer program a year-round program. Now, that's the other reason why the VAPA Foundation exists. It's really to allow this level of flexibility. Because to me, it doesn't matter if it goes through the district, like any funding that funds all sorts of programming goes through the district or through the VAPA Foundation or through one of our art partners. So long as it is benefiting our students and teachers and parents, then I believe, and community, then I believe it is a success. And the VAPA Foundation allows that level of flexibility. And if we see something like that, that's amazing. Now, for example, the VEP program that I mentioned, that is our only open application process, but there's other conversations that can be had that could also be collaborative.
Yeah, what I love about that is especially underserved communities really benefit from like longer term opportunities, right? And really building relationships with teaching artists and all of that. So that's exciting to me that you're able to support things that are going well and can keep going and keep growing so that those students can really benefit from that content and those relationships over time. That's awesome.
Exactly. And for at least the way we're currently functioning is if there is, for example, a contract that any of our partners already have with the district, I could potentially have other conversations to enhance that program further. And really, this is just one of those results, although it hasn't resulted yet. But those are the type of things that I'm monitoring as well. Like, what impact is this program having? And if it is having a good impact, does it make sense to try and expand on it?
Yeah. Super exciting. Now, we were kind of talking about this conversation that we would share with others. You were mentioning also that something you're kind of interested in is how VAPA Foundation can also support like healing in the arts. And I'm just curious, like what your thoughts are about that. That's something that's like extra special and near and dear to my heart. So, and a lot of the folks who listen to this. So I'm curious, like where are you with that? What are your thoughts about that?
Sure. And if you don't mind, I'll just share a quick anecdote.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
I mean, coming from the neighborhood I came from, Imperial Beach, back when it was the way it was before,
Yeah.
Where the Del Sol gangs and the Nestor gangs and the Imperial Beach gangs collided. I remember one day, one of my classmates did not show up in class because she had been murdered at the community center across from the church that we both attended. So what the arts to me was a coping mechanism. It was a way to stay safe and off the streets, and something that inspired me to aspire for more.
Yeah.
So when it comes to healing, the arts has a role that is pretty astounding. Like, I don't think there's, well, we all hail in different ways, but number one, if you can keep kids off the street and if you can get them to dream of bigger, better things and give them good role models, that's what the arts is about.
Yeah. So as you're kind of looking at applications that are coming in or monitoring programs in San Diego, is that something you're going to kind of be like keeping an eye out on?
Yes. Well, what it comes down to is there's a lot of data to collect. The district has done a good job creating a gap analysis for curriculum. So basically all arts programming during school hours. Right now, I think one of the things that I also need to gather is arts programming during weekends and after school, like basically outside of school hours, because that's another piece of the equation. Yeah. And then another piece of data that I think is also important is really tracking the results. And what I mean by that is we sometimes talk about career and college pathways. And in my case, I'm more concerned about the creative college and career pathways. But bottom line, it doesn't matter if it's arts related or engineering related. What we're struggling data wise now, education, is tracking if they're actually achieving the career and college pathway that they sought, at least from high school. So one of the things that I'd like to start working on, and I'm also in conversations with other people with, is maybe tracking the first 6 years after high school, you know, seeing where they end up and whether they start working, whether they're unemployed and all that stuff. I think 6 years is a good range of data, because then that'll tell you whether they're in college or they've gone off to work, if they're a dancer, work for a company, a dance company, things like that. And I think it's possible, but it also means people working together and things like data sharing agreements between the high schools and the higher education, and maybe even the labor departments within the city.
So you're really looking at kind of like college and career as a life skill that's kind of evidence of these programs working.
Yes. I mean, it's not everything. Obviously, there's arts for the sake of the arts.
Yeah.
But from an economic standpoint, and especially given all the literature that's come out in San Diego specifically about the creative workforce and how it was affected by COVID, I think knowing about the workforce more and how people enter the workforce and stay in the workforce, that's important data.
Yeah, and I think that something that's so cool about like arts education, out of school time arts, creative youth development work is it gives young people such an opportunity to practice like independent living skills and all these soft skills and so many things that can relate even outside of an arts-based setting. There's so many things that they can learn there that they can apply to whatever pathway they choose in life, right? And obviously those of us that love arts would love to see them, you know, carry on that torch. But I know in my work at the Monarch School with youth impacted by homelessness, so many of our students who were really involved in our arts program went on to, you know, be athletes or went on to do a lot of other things, but their experiences in with those relationships and with all those skills they got to develop and the leadership they developed really helped them aspire to other things and do those things successfully.
Indeed, indeed. And that's one of the things I think that you really hit on, basically the experiences. So one of the other goals that I'd like to see happen is have all sorts of universal programming. And what I mean by that is not targeting specific geographical areas, but basically every student gets to experience this. So what I kind of envision is for, like, let's say during the elementary years, all students get to experience like a dance company and then a theater company and a music company and a visual arts company. And then in middle school, they get to do the same thing, like a field trip to all four of these. But in addition to that, by middle school, they should start being exposed to things like exhibits, seeing other students perform, and maybe even invited to perform and produce themselves. So by the time they get into high school, then they can start thinking about their own careers and college pathways. Yeah. And if there's any internships that make sense for whether they're an engineer, there's still probably creative internships that could be a good fit for them.
Yeah. Connecting
them to those type of partners who provide really mentorship and guidance into like, well, what could be the future for me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And are there any programs that you're already partnering with to do that? Or is that kind of like a new thing that you're going to be looking at?
I think we're in a very key time in our development, in our organizational life stage.
Yeah.
So a lot of this is aspirational at the moment. There's some things that are already happening, but right now, I would say we were originally planning to have a strategic planning session during July. Yeah. It didn't quite happen. But this is the reason why this is so important, is because the district has come up with their 10-year vision plan. Right. The VAPA department within the district has come up with their 5-year art education plan. So now it's time for the VAPA Foundation to come up with its own vision and 5-year strategic plan. Mm-hmm. So that's what executive directors like myself are here to do. You really listen, not just to the community, but to the people who've been entrusted by the community to bring about art education in San Diego Unified.
Yeah,
I'm here to bring about that vision. So until I have more clear direction, I'm really playing it by ear. I'm listening to people like yourself, Rochelle, and listening to what you think we need in San Diego. But based off of what I've heard, these are just some of the things I think would help address many of the issues that that concern art education here in San Diego.
Yeah. So folks who are listening, is there anything that they could do to help you all or connect, or is there anything that you need from the community right now that would help you with your bigger vision and help you kind of clarify your role and what supports you can, like what dots you can connect for folks?
Yes. I mean, first and foremost, if you are one of the art organizations that function in and serve San Diego Unified School District, definitely reach out and get to know me. I'm open to getting to know you all, connecting you deeper into the staffing at San Diego Unified School District, but not just the district, but the individual communities, the PTAs at every school and the foundations attached to them. Because there's a lot of need out there and a lot of things to address. Yeah. I would say that's important. The other thing is, right now I feel research is important, because the more research we do, the more we can advocate for where the needs are. But that comes from really a willingness to participate in research projects.
Right.
If you ever get a survey, let's say from me or Rochelle related to whatever, I would say, please participate. We need that data.
Yeah, it's super, super helpful. Yeah. Cool. Well, there are a couple of things that have been kind of big themes in this talk that these little weekly talks that I've been doing over the past year. And one of them has been, it's been such a hard year for people. And I'm curious how a leader like yourself, like, what are the things that you have done to take good care of yourself? Like, what's been your go-to during this pandemic time for your own mental health and well-being?
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like?
Well, I'll tell you, during COVID times, we're not quite post-COVID times, but it feels a lot better than it did a year ago.
Oh, yeah.
And I will say the number one thing I did, especially since I live alone, is I found a COVID partner. like basically someone who I could just like, hey, you know, you live alone, I live alone. Let's, this is pretty tough to get through alone. Let's just get through it together. And we did things like, I don't know, walks and other stuff, you know, whatever it took. Cause yeah, I'm an introvert, and she's an introvert, but even we had our limits.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Now that it's post-COVID, some of the things that helped me stay sane is I do a lot of hobbies, but a lot of outdoor hobbies. Like I've started sailing now this summer, and it's been quite a joy. For whatever reason, I decided not to do a lot of sailing about a year ago. But now that I'm getting back into it, I like sailing, especially because it's not related to the arts. Because I'm so ingrained in the arts, in art education right now. So to have something, a hobby that's not related to the arts, as much as I love it, is it's good.
Yeah, it's part of being a well-rounded human, right? And
yeah,
I can imagine just being out there on the open water and just how amazing that would be after all this time on screens, and you know, just being in the fresh air and the elements and navigating the, you know, the real world in a way.
Yes, it's a great analogy for life. So it's a lot of things, but basically sometimes the wind's blowing your direction, sometimes it's not. How do you, like, you know, jib and tack to get to where you want?
Right. Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah. So another question that I've been asking a lot of folks that I'm curious what your thoughts are about this. One of the things that I've been asking is, what is something that you wish all educators knew?
Wish all educators knew.
What's something you wish that the educators of the world knew?
I would say the importance of advocacy, to be honest, because when I talk about advocacy, I'm not even talking about external advocacy, you know. Sometimes it's internal, you know. There's things that are important, and things like the arts, like it's very easy for us to forget how important, you know, a specific curriculum is. So realizing that it's important, maybe through research and advocating for it, speaking up. And this could apply even wider, you know, not just arts advocacy, but like social justice advocacy. But it does have an effect. Because if you coordinate that, then things like programs and collaborations happen.
Yeah.
And community change, systemic change.
Yeah, I love that. The importance of just speaking up, you know, standing up for the concerns of your students, your constituents, and who else is out here talking about it, and connect those dots and really make some changes. And that's what's so exciting about like what we're doing in the San Diego Creative Youth Development Network, is just raising up the needs and the voices of so many communities together and coming together to meet them. So very cool. Yeah. Any other closing thoughts that you might have for our community who's listening here today? And they might be listening live on Facebook. They might be catching a replay or checking it out on YouTube later. You know, like what do you want them to walk away with today?
I would say the most important thing is to, if you don't have a, how do I say this? Like, basically, there's a lot of generous patrons out there. So you need to have a mentality that there's an abundance, you know, an abundance mentality. It's so easy to think, oh yeah, like we didn't get that grant or blah, 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 blah. But to be honest, there's a lot of resources out there that's available, but you can really only get it if you keep that abundancy mentality in mind. Because then otherwise you don't even know it's available, or even you're even worthy to get it, for lack of a better word, unless you say, no, there's a lot of resources out there. We can all work together, and there's enough, you know, people in San Diego to support all of our programming. We don't have to compete with each other. Let's all work together, you know, and collaborate, and maybe work together to get some of those resources together.
Yeah.
Because that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help you do that. If there is anything that can really further art education in San Diego, I promise you that there's ways to fund your programming. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for that message, because I was just talking with you know, someone who's in the field of philanthropy, and we were talking this morning about the impact of that scarcity mindset on organizations and how hard it can be when funding isn't available or grants get pulled, or, you know, the Arts Council decides to fund something else or whatever, and how big of an impact that has on organizations. But if we can really keep that mindset of like, there are folks who want to support what we're doing, let's keep looking for them, let's keep working together to get those resources to those folks. That's really exciting. And I think that mindset is like 100% of the game, right? So thank you for that. And thank you so much for what you're doing. I'm looking forward to continuing our collaboration and in our network, and you know, getting the arts to the students who need it, and to the ones that don't know they need it yet. It's very exciting. And for those of you that are watching, I'm doing a lot of work to support organizations and schools through the transition of this time. It's been a hard time for a lot of people, and I can help you kind of come back together as a team, unite, get on the same page, get on the same vision, and really serve your kids the way that you really dreaming of. So reach out to me. I will do free consultations with anybody who's interested. And and like, subscribe. My goal is to get 100 subscribers by the end of the month. I mean, by the end of the summer. So share this with others who need it. We really want to get this positive message out to others. And Michaelangelo, thank you again so much for being with us today. And I'll see you in some space again soon, I'm sure.
Indeed. Beautiful. Goodbye, Rochelle.
All right. Take care.